Well, folks, I'm kind of sad to say this is our last episode of this wine season of the Four Top, which means it's my last sponsor break conversation with a really cool winemaker whom I really enjoyed getting to know this fall, Leah Adent. She is the head winemaker at Erath Winery right here in Oregon, a really historic Willamette Valley winery. She's the third head winemaker ever. She's a delight. She's really smart. She's well-traveled and a fantastic winemaker. And she has some amazing, entertaining advice for us. And, you know, who am I kidding? I'm also looking forward to sipping some more Erath Single Vineyard Knight's Gambit Pinot Noir 2019. It is a really precise, elegant wine. I really enjoy this wine. It's sure to be a winner at any holiday table. Other than the kids' table. Don't serve this at the kids' table. So stay tuned for my conversation with Leah. And before we say goodbye to 2022, be sure to pick up that special 3-pack of wines at a 15% discount at erath.com/thefourtop. That includes all the Erath wines we've been talking about this season, the Quail Run Pinot Blanc, the Resplendent Pinot Noir, and the Single Vineyard Knight's Gambit Pinot Noir. All of those wines are from the 2019 vintage. And just use that promo code 4TOP to get that discount. And now, here's the show.
Many topics that we're going to talk about today, but one thing I know is going to come up is probably one of the most volatile subjects in wine: natural wine. If you guys didn't think that was funny, I could try something else because
it's true. Like
I've
no one
nailed
laughed.
that. No one laughed.
I think it was funnier due to the awkwardness of it. Was the funny part? That was funny to me.
I've got another one. I'll get another one. I recently went to an all-natural wine bar, and they had a huge German selection. But within Germany, do you know what the largest sub-region in Germany was for this natural wine bar?
No. What was it?
The Pfalz.
Okay.
That's pretty good. I like that.
That one hit.
That was a less volatile joke. Hello and welcome to the Four Top. It's a roundtable discussion of today's hot button topics in the wine and food world. I am your host, Catherine Cole.
And I'm your host, Martin Reyes, Master of Wine. And you know, Catherine, I am proud of what we've covered this season on the Four Top. We've covered vineyard, labor, and unionization, the white supremacist language of wine, the challenges to serious wine writing.
Yeah, a lot of serious topics, Martin, and I'm so glad you're proud of our work because I think it's time to make an episode that we're really not very proud of.
Oh, does this mean it's time for Hot Takes Cold Wine?
Yes, it is that time again. This is the episode where we get very unserious about the most important issues in the wine industry. We will talk about the aspects of wine culture that truly annoy us and what we might defend to the death.
That's fun. This is really what gets me going. As you know, I think that's where like the secret superpower of wine is that it really lights you up. The last season, I think it was episode 108, we had Philippe Andre and Marissa Ross, and it was fun, but it was also really intense because you're really getting into underneath the skin of the subject. That's where you really get some fascinating conversations, and I'm looking forward to today very much.
Absolutely. Our first guest is a pro behind the mic, and in fact, he's coming to us from, where are you? Channing, are you in Atlanta right now?
Georgia.
Atlanta, Georgia. You are also the king of the off-the-cuff comment, but I should back up and say Channing Frye is an NBA champion, lead analyst for Turner Sports, co-host of the Road Trippin' Basketball podcast, and a lot of other things. But for our purposes, he is the owner of Chosen Family Wines right here in the Willamette Valley. So good to see you, Channing.
Yeah, it was good to see you yesterday, too. Thanks for having me.
You make some delicious wines.
Listen, I don't make them. I'm just a vintner, but we put we all put our fingers in the pot. But yeah, no. Got to give credit to Jackson Holstein and the other collaborations that we do. They're the winemakers. They get the credit. I just I do the talking so they don't have to.
Well, it's a very successful project. Delicious wines.
Thank you.
And our next guest, Jason Wise. He is a mastermind behind the Psalm documentary series and the mastermind also behind Psalm TV. He's been named to the Wine Enthusiast 40 Under 40, another alum. Yay, go Jason. And Wine Enthusiast Person of the Year. He's also an aspiring dancer. Jason, it is great to have you on here.
That's right. It's an honor to be here. I'm very, very far in the aspiration category for dancing, but it looks pretty good. I'm not bad. I would say that when you guys are doing an episode on things that annoy you in wine, my fear is that half the guests you'd have on would probably bring up Somm, the movie I made. So I'm glad that I'm on to at least defend that. Channing, I'm hoping that that's not your topic.
No, I like the song.
Good. All right, good.
I like it. I dig it.
It really warms my heart. You mean that?
I think I do mean that. Yeah, I would tell you if it was trash.
Good. Well, I've just been drunk for 14 years making movies. That's my MO. That's what I do. So it's an honor to be on here, Martine. Thank you.
Jason, we're really glad to have you, especially when somebody makes something that does infiltrate the culture of wine, and it continues to develop, of course. We all have a relationship to your work. For me personally, I have to say, Jason, I'm happy to tell you this, that we share probably a little bit of a chafing around the people who bring up the documentary series, because for me, it has been something that's been brought up like, hey, you're a master sommelier, which I'm not. I'm a master of wine, right? So they confuse it, like, hey, have you seen that movie? Are any of those guys your friends? Are you going to be on the next movie? I'm like, no. If you did a movie about masters of wine, it would be very boring.
You said it.
And you would just have one long pan of us furiously writing on a desk, typing or writing, and that would be the extent of the movie. So no, there's not going to be, never was going to be a movie about masters of wine. But beneath that, it's like, hey, there's a difference between the MS, Master Sommelier, and MW. You were the one who made some Master Sommeliers effectively film stars in many instances. So my first question, I guess, could be, whose egos do you think are bigger, Master Sommeliers or film stars?
Oh, or film stars. Well, here's the tricky thing. I mean, wine and food touch everything. You can talk about religion and war, and you can talk about sex. You can talk about anything when it comes to this, but it's not like mafia movies where if you're a mobster, they're not going to be like, have you seen that one only film Goodfellas about the mob? So the problem with Somm is it's kind of one of the only mainstream or semi-mainstream type films that came out about sommeliers. So I don't know. I'll go with the sommeliers in the ego department. You have to understand, I know more sommeliers than any human being, and masters of wine and winemakers than any human being needs in their life, and I would gladly take more. I love these people very much.
Yes, many of them are my friends too, including Dylan Proctor, who co-founded Wine Unify with me and Margaret McCamick.
D is my boy,
and he's awesome.
He's in the next Somm coming.
He's in the next one.
He's a good guy.
That's fantastic. So, I mean, the joke there, of course, is within wine, we all of us get accused of having large egos. It's not just MSs or MWs or winemakers. And as a matter of fact, do you guys know the difference between a winemaker and God?
No.
Tell us.
A winemaker will tell you they're God, or no.
Well, no, God doesn't think he's a winemaker.
Oh, there it is. It's the same joke. How do you know somebody's a master sommelier in the room? Like, don't worry, they'll tell you.
Right. You know what the follow-up is to that?
What's that?
You know how when the master of wine is in the room?
Oh, God.
She'll write a 7-page dissertation about why she's in that room.
That's accurate.
I don't really meet a lot of sommeliers. The only one I met who was awesome was Aldo.
Oh, yeah, in New York.
Oh, Aldo, yeah.
Aldo Somm?
Yeah, it was genuinely the nicest human being of all time. And I was thinking, dude, this dude is where he's at, the boss of all, like the end boss. I was like, is he going to be nice? What is he going to be like? And he was genuinely like the warmest, most engaging, fun person to try and get a bottle of wine from. And it was just like, I've learned more in the two minutes in conversations from talking to him than like me reading any book. It was crazy.
Mm.
Aldo is one of the sweetest human beings. I think, back to the ego thing, I would say that there is no industry, and I say this hands down, there is no industry more welcoming, more generous, and more willing to bring you into the fold that I've found. Being a documentarian, I make stuff that's not just wine. I mean, I do underwater photography, I do nature stuff, I do all, and I can tell you that out of all the weird little places that I've infiltrated, especially the winemaking area, people are so incredibly generous and they're so passionate. So, take my comments with jest, but I also think the concept of a sommelier, I have a much looser definition than most people. You've probably met a lot of people who are sommeliers, Channing, that
Yeah.
Maybe don't have a certification or something, but I would still consider them a som.
Oh, probably. Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay, so if the winemakers don't have big egos and the sommeliers don't have big egos, Channing, let's talk about the totally obsessed freaks, the wine geeks versus basketball freaks. Who is more obsessed? Who is more
wine geeks? So
really?
Not even close.
Seriously?
Here's why. Because every fanatic basketball fan understands that their team, except for the 2016 Warriors, where they went 73-9, right? Where they just basically beat the record of the greatest team ever.
Go Cavs.
Yeah, go Cavs always. Shout out Kevin Love, my guy.
I'm from Cleveland. Sorry.
Yeah. But wine geeks think that they never lose. Any wine that they picked, this is the best one because this year or this, hit Mallow 3 times instead of 2 and blah, blah, blah. And you're just I don't know if I like this. I just don't like Malbecs, right? And then, I think you look at a basketball fanatic, they know they don't have they know that they're going to lose sometimes, right? I just don't think that wine nerds, wine geeks, especially Instagram or social media wine fanatics, they think that their choice is the best choice every single time and don't argue with them.
Fascinating. Channing, I appreciate your perspective because you've got obviously both a huge amount of basketball freaks that you've talked to. It's your industry, they freak out about you. And of course, all I have is the wine where you've got both. I think secretly deep down inside, wine geeks know that and I'm speaking for all of us, and Catherine and Jason, I think I'll put you in the same boat here. We secretly know that we often get things wrong all the time. We're not that good at blind tasting. We're not that good at trivia. We're not that good about knowing everything. We've all faked it till we made it. I've learned more after my credential than before. And to say that I became a master, I'm not a freaking master. Deep down inside, most of us actually, even the ones that have the rubric, the initials after our names, we make mistakes so much. And I think we ought to be more honest about it. But then going back to basketball freaks, or sports freaks, is there something like that where people say, is there any relation? Is there anything equivalent to that on the sports side? Where people
it's the media. It's 100% the media. So my job, or Stephen A. Smith or some of these other big name players or people, a lot of them make shit up. They make shit up just because they want clicks or they want to incite a emotion or a feeling. It is TV, it is media, it is a show, right? And so the show has to be entertaining. So sometimes, on different networks, let's say it's LeBron, there'll be a guy who just absolutely refuses to give LeBron credit. Even if he went perfect from the field, won a championship, he would always take the antagonist side, right? Because it's good for TV. So instead of acknowledging, hey, I was wrong about him, he can't shoot free throws, you're like, he just got lucky that day, And so, yeah, and that's what I'm saying. Instead of going, you know what, I was wrong, my bad. I was wrong about this guy or this program or this team or this player. They'll just say yeah, they just got lucky that one time, and they'll wait for you to lose before they go, see exactly what I thought. And so in the media, that's why more players or ex-players like myself, retired players, have started their own podcasts, have tried to get out in the media. And what I do here at Turner is just try to showcase things that aren't as aggressive, right? And not as divisive or, I don't want to say hard-hitting, but basketball is a damn game. Wine is really just alcoholic juice. It's just fun. It's enjoyable. Yeah. It's engaging.
So you're saying Charles Barkley secretly does admire the Warriors and
oh yes,
and Steph after
you know what? Chuck and Shaq, because I work side by side with them, we're all in the same studio. Their understanding of basketball is wild when you really sit down and talk to them. Like, I grew up in Phoenix. Charles Barkley was like my idol, right? And not necessarily like his off the court stuff, right? Which we laugh about now. But like, then you look at Shaq, and these guys are so good. They see the game in a way that, like, for me, a role player, even though I'm a champion, I have there's no way I could do that. Shaq would just be like, why don't you just get the ball in the post and score them out every time? I'm like, Shaq. Like, I'm not 7 foot, 400 pounds, and I'm built like a cat. Like, I don't move like that. The game isn't that easy. But for them, they think it moves that easy still. And that's what's been interesting, to try to get in their mind of why they think what they think and why they do and say what they do. But they are funny, man. They are funny.
I want to switch gears for a sec, because I've heard both of you mention something about social media. In what way are sports fans and wine freaks different in their approach to social media?
Well, okay, look. All right. How do I say this without being a total asshole here?
No,
please be an asshole. Go
yeah,
ahead.
Well, you are what you are. I think the social media thing, first of all, sports has had, well, if you really get down to it, thousands of years of building insane hot takes and really deep, huge audiences. I mean, there are people who will sit there and argue about, a Yankees team in the 1980s for 5 hours with another 100 people online. The difference with wine is it's seemingly new. And so you have all of these people that want very much to be the one to teach you. Everything's wine 101, wine 101. And, I have a real big issue with, not that I think anybody should be able to teach and be a part and be welcomed in, but there's this element of like entitlement that comes on social media with wine that is astounding. And, for the most part, somebody's like, look, I'm going to teach you wine, and I'm going to do it with this New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc that is paying me to do it, $175 for my post. And that doesn't exist in sports, but sports has had a long time to distill. There's a lot of bullshit radar in sports that goes away real quick. But in wine, I don't know. It's just too new. I mean, I hate to say it, 99% and of the Instagram quote unquote influencers are a lot of white noise. Sorry.
Yeah, they suck.
I'm sorry. They just are. Well, and there are many people I'm friends with, and I adore them personally, but as personalities telling you about wine, block them, because you're not learning anything.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. Well, it's true. I mean, it's
totally true. It's totally true. And I think it's become like, oh, look at the keys to my Ferrari, right? It's like, that's not, the people that I like to follow are the ones that like actually go to the vineyard, they meet the person, they know them, like they know the wine, whether that's the winemaker, whether they know that's the producer. And they're like, these are good people. They're a little bit off the beaten path. Like, I'm tired of seeing all these DRCs. I'm tired of seeing all Burgundy to me is absolutely amazing, right? And it's obviously the grandfather of Pinot Noir, the big dog. But everybody online, you never see people post small good wines that may be 20 or $30, right? It's all this showing off, like, especially in the NBA and the NFL and whoever professional sports, when they show you a bottle of wine, it's never just a regular bottle of wine that is accessible to most people. It's never like, hey man, I found this crazy, $60 Sonoma Coast because I actually went there and did it. But it's like, let me go to the local wine shop. Let me take a picture of like Petrus and all these expensive Bordeaux and this Burgundy, and then let me take a picture like I'm drinking this tonight. It's like, that doesn't happen. You're not teaching anybody anything. You're just showing off.
It goes the other way too, like dangerously. So you find people that go one direction. They're like, hey, this is, the Petrus that someone poured for me at a restaurant that I'm claiming was my wine. Yeah. Or there's the opposite side, which is a real big problem of people who are like, I discovered this Godeo from Northwest Spain and it's the only thing that's good. And you're kind of like, first of all, what the hell are you talking about? People who are like, I only drink natural wine, or I only drink X, or I like pet nats, or I like only growers champagne. They're the worst. They are the worst of the worst in the wine business because those people, they don't know anything but the stuff they like to drink right then.
Oh,
and
that's so
I
true.
have an advantage of being in the wine peripherally to the wine business for now 14 years. And I've watched everybody's journey go up and down all over the place. And what I find is, you start off and everyone's like, man, Caymus Special Select's the best wine in the world. And then 3 years later, they hate anybody who thinks Caymus Special Select is a good wine. And they only like, I don't know, some, Cru Beaujolais. And they're like, this Cru Beaujolais is the best thing. And they never look back at their own journey when others are going through that journey. And then you find them 6 years later and they're like, have you ever had an Old Heights Cabernet? It's amazing. And you're like, what the hell is wrong with you? Like it's just this like no collective memory of the way it happened for you. It's like you judge everybody else on the way where they are in this moment. And that's the tricky part with wine is people only love and respect the stuff they're currently drinking and infatuated with.
I want to bring Martin in here because we were talking a little bit about, posers who want to be seen as wine snobs. But Martin, I know you have strong feelings about this term wine snob.
Yeah. To answer your question, Catherine, I want to build upon something that Jason said. Wine knowledge is so, it's a trigger, both positively and negatively for people. It's exalted, it's vilified, it's adored, it's hated. And I've been thinking about, why don't we call doctors medical snobs, or attorneys law snobs, or investment bankers money snobs, right? They're professionals at what they do.
I wish I was a money snob.
Yeah, and we still call wine pros wine snobs. It's laden with luxury. Humans love to root for the underdog while also, take down the rich boy. Right. So we love to be like the DRCs and Silver Oaks and Caymus and Dom Perignon. They're punching bags. They're cultural punching bags for people that want to stick it to the man.
I'll drink all those, by the way.
Right. Exactly. And then when you're there in front of me, you're like, oh, can you pour me a taste? Because this is supposed to be luxury and it's expensive and it's rare. So we're seduced by something that we love to despise, even though we're still seduced by it. And so that knowledge or the education of wine, now that I really think about what Jason just said, it's a trigger because it hits us on multiple levels. Jealousy, cool kids versus nerds, wealth versus not wealth, right? Whatever the opposite of that is. I'm sorry, I'm high on codeine right now. And so
who's not, Martin?
Yeah, who's not?
It's so hard for me to stay quiet here because this is something I think about all the time. And one of my biggest problems with this aspect is I think people who are deeply into wine, and I think it's even more so than in the food world, they can only talk about that. And so one thing that I've strived since moment one, Sam was like considered one of the best sports films of the year by people. Like I never thought of it as a wine movie.
Oh, yeah.
And so what's interesting about my thing is like, I don't think a lot of people, and I'm generalizing grossly here. So to your listeners, I'm not saying you in particular, I'm looking at the masses here. Why sports is so important to talk about in this is because oftentimes I'll have NBA players and stuff on my podcast or on the shows on Sam TV, and people are like, less sports, more wine. And I try to explain to people, wine is a thing that sits at the table. It does not move. It doesn't do anything. And so when you can only talk about wine, when you can only talk about the must-wait levels in German Riesling, it is not what wine's about. Wine is about all the other shit. And so the problem is like, when somebody's like, oh, sports, I don't watch sports, I don't know anything about sports. It's like, do you have any idea how shallow that is for the audience you can reach? It's like if you've ever sat with somebody who's deeply religious, maybe they're like a born-again Christian or they're Zoroastrian, I don't care what they are, and all they talk about is their religion, and you're like, get out of, go away. It's so frustrating because it's all this other stuff. You need to be kind of a Renaissance person to make wine well-rounded in a discussion.
Hey there, listeners. We are back with another installment of my very fun interview with Erath's head winemaker, Leah Adent. Thank you so much, Erath, for sponsoring this wine season of the Foretop, because it's given me a really good opportunity to hang out with Leah. I've really been enjoying our conversation. And Leah, you were just saying that you have some entertaining tips you might be up for sharing.
Yeah, I've got a couple that I think, always go over well. I think you'd appreciate this first one. You can never go wrong with bringing a bottle of bubbles.
Never.
Never, ever.
Never.
Make sure it's cold.
Absolutely.
I think, if you're looking for something to bring that's a little bit different, that's a little unique, things like Pinot Blanc, where people have heard of it before, but maybe not quite familiar with it. It's not too extravagant. It's not going to break the bank, but it kind of creates what is that? Let me try that. Some interest, some spark is always nice.
And everyone brings red wine.
Yes.
It's just always the thing people... So if you're the one who brings the white and it's chilled, then
it will get drunk.
All the white wine drinkers in the room will be like, yes.
Yes.
They will pounce on it.
Yes. And it might not be till the end of the night, but, something cleansing, refreshing at the end of a big meal, you can't go wrong. Mm-hmm. I have a fun game that I like to play, especially with family that you don't see often, or a new group of people. Let's say you're traveling and invited to a Christmas or a holiday somewhere. If you can find an older wine to bring, which could be a fortified, could be something, it doesn't even have to be that old. But let's say it's a 10-year-old wine, to go around the room and ask everyone where they were in 2010 or whatever the vintage is. So you get to, it's a little icebreaker. Mm-hmm. And especially for people who are of different demographics or different ages, you get some really good stories and get to dive into people's personal life a little bit. So that's a fun one I like to play.
That's a good one for the holidays too, because, we're often stuck with relatives that we may feel like we have nothing in common with.
Absolutely, yeah.
But, we can all talk about where we were and what we were up to. And I love that idea.
Yeah.
Excellent. And you have been all over the world, so I'm sure whatever year is thrown out to you, Leah, you have a very interesting
There's a harvest related to it. Yeah. That's the funny thing about working so many different harvests, is that I can listen to a song that comes on and it'll remind me of, Napa in 2009, or, whatever was in the news at that time. You're like, oh yeah, I was in Burgundy, and I didn't have a care in the world about what was happening in the U.S. or something.
And so what harvest music did they listen to in Switzerland?
Ooh, French music. I was in the French part of Switzerland. So it was French music, and then we actually had a lot of Portuguese workers as well. So it was all kinds of European music. It was
Portuguese music is the best.
Yeah.
So good.
That was a wild harvest. It was a fascinating experience.
I think you need to write your memoirs. Well, let's just dig in again to our Knight's Gambit Pinot Noir. I do feel like these wines are so elegant that they could be mistaken for French or, European.
I will take that as a compliment.
So anything else you want to tell us about the Knight's Gambit Pinot Noir from the Dundee Hills?
What can I say about it? It's one of those vineyards you walk into and it just feels right. I walk into some vineyards and with the kind of the laser eye, I can go, I wish they did this, or we want to change this for next year, or maybe we need to trial something. And you walk into Knight's Gambit and it's just balanced. It just knows what to do, and the soil works with that. And we've got 4 different Pinot clones up there, so we get a little bit of variation. It's a big steep slope, so we get to pick it out, over, hopefully this year we'll say over 2 weeks, but it might be kind of condensed. It's just an amazing, amazing vineyard. On a clear day, you get an absolutely spectacular view of Mount Hood and Mount Jefferson. It's pretty incomparable to a lot of other vineyards, even in the Dundee Hills, which is arguably the best region within the Willamette Valley. Mm-hmm. I love it.
Wow, I love that. Well, thank you for sharing this beautiful wine with me, Leah. And listeners, if you want to try it as well, you can get it for 15% off. So go on over to erath.com/theforetop and enter the promo code FORETOP to receive a 15% discount through December 31st, 2022. That's good for single bottle purchases as well as the Four Top 3-pack, and that includes the Erath Quail Run Pinot Blanc 2019, the Erath Resplendent Pinot Noir 2019, and the wine we're tasting right now, the Erath Single Vineyard Knight's Gambit Pinot Noir 2019. Well, Leah Aiden, thank you so much for joining me for these Four Top conversations, and thank you to Erath Winery for sponsoring this wine season. It's been a total pleasure to sit and chat with you.
Thank you, likewise.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Let's get back to our conversation. And I think for the second half of this conversation, I'd love to hear the hills that you all would die on in the wine world. And I want to pick up on what Martin and Jason were just discussing, because the hill I want to die on is that wine culture is essentially a conspiracy theory. Jason was talking about people who just talk too much about, their religious leanings or anything else they're obsessed with. And I have been enjoying the podcast from Jordan Klepper of The Daily Show called Jordan Klepper Fingers the Conspiracy. And it's about like QAnon and all that fun stuff. And the more I listened to it, the more I was like, oh, this is also about wine, because there's so many things that we just go around proclaiming that may not necessarily be true. I mean, who really knows if terroir is a real thing? The geologists tell us, no, it's not. It's not real. You talk about biodynamics for a while and you realize you sound like a complete lunatic. So yeah, that's my theory about wine, is that it's basically a conspiracy theory. And so if you know someone who's kind of gone down that QAnon rabbit hole, my advice is like migrate them towards wine as kind of like a healthier obsession.
Catherine, you've written a book about biodynamics and about, right? So about dynamic wine.
Yeah. I mean, I talked to these producers who were like talking about quantum theory. It's like, if you are not a physicist, do not talk about quantum theory. But you hear all the conspiracy theorists talk about quantum theory. And it's like, what are you talking about? You're not a scientist.
Isn't that the name of the next Ant-Man movie?
Quantum Mania.
That's probably what they've seen. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, like what does that have to do with agriculture? Anyway.
Dude, man.
Biodynamics. Ooh, boy, some tough history with that subject. I'm not going to get into it.
Delicious wines. I'm so on board with it. I so drink the Kool-Aid because the wines are delicious. But at the same time, the things people say, and if you read a lot of Rudolf Steiner, which unfortunately I have done, brilliant man, nuts.
Horrible racist, though. The guy had some serious issues.
Oh, that's not good. Also, the whole obsession with like having your own language and being able to drop terms that no one else understands and like, oh, I know about this because I've gone down this rabbit hole and I've researched this. That's all. Wine people are totally like that.
This is also true.
This is very true. That the unfermented sugars in wine are typically the five carbon sugars, not the 6 carbon sugars that are glucose and fructose, and that's why we.
And did you know that Elvis is not dead?
Mine's even hotter than yours, and I know I'm going to get yelled at for this. But as someone under 40 who has been inundated with just, this is like the end all be all, Napa is overrated. That's the hill I'm talking.
Wow.
I will say
not that hot.
It's not that hot. I'm saying most of Napa is extremely overrated.
As a fellow Willamette Valley resident, I am so behind you on that.
I just think it's funny, right? We talk about, especially for I think the younger generation, it's like we talked about Caymus, we talked about Silver Oak or Opus One, but like none of those things are really accessible at a real, like at a decent, you're not getting what you're supposed to be getting for that price. You're not telling the real story for me, right? Like each year you could taste the wine and it basically tastes the same since the early 2000s, right? And so for me, it's like, how do you tell a story about, I think Cabernet the grape is amazing. I think there are places in Napa that do it well. They do it amazing, but the rest of them are just kind of like following behind the boat. They're like the seagulls behind the fishing boat, right? Just grabbing anybody. I think, some people don't even know Cabernet is grown in Washington, right? And
I was going to say, there's some really good Washington Cabernets.
Really good Washington Cabs. And when you try them, you're like, wait, why does this taste so much different than this? And then it's not just like, the terroir or the region, right? Because that's obviously going to have an impact. But it's like just one thing is like inundated with sugar and just oak bombed out of its skull. And you're just like, there's no restraint on this. You're just putting something out there where people get the enamel ripped off their teeth. And you're like, yeah, let me hold this for 20 years when you're 80 years old. It's like, good luck. But yes, that's what and I just don't think it's fair that like you're holding something so, that's so delicious, and you just put it on this wild pedestal where now one bottle's like $2,000. I'm like,
I think it's a cost to quality thing though, Channing. I mean,
Yeah,
like
there we
if that wine was $38 a bottle, you wouldn't say that.
no,
But
hell
it
no.
is, you know, I mean, so like, and I think a lot of people do take that into consideration. I mean, look, if you have, you know, if you're Steph Curry and you can buy whatever wine you want constantly, you're probably going to do it. But I think Napa's just outpriced. You know, it's
Yes,
I
and
don't
that's
know.
what I mean. Outpriced, overrated. I think that's more of what my whole point is like I'm looking around and you can go to like some amazing places in Bordeaux or Italy and these places, and you're just like, oh, the bottle's $400. It's expensive as shit, but it's still decent compared to $1,000 bottle of somewhere in Napa where you're like, is this even going to be delicious in 10 years? Like, there's just not that body of work, right, for that price.
Yeah, that's not so hot a take. I like that take.
Martin, how are you feeling? Do you need some therapy?
As somebody who's right now at a Napa winery, you guys can hear the leaf blower in the background. It's a working winery just here at the edge of American Canyon. It's called RD. It's an interesting take because I do believe there's a lot of truth, Channing, in what you said. There is, for better or worse, an outsized amount of attention placed on this region, which then feeds into the pricing structure, feeds into the lifestyle, feeds into that luxury vibe, which then becomes, you know, a potential punching bag for wine culture to say, you know, there's no value, it's all monolithic, just everything you said. There's certainly, you know, overpriced and underproduced wines here, but I think that outsized attention lends it to become a caricature versus the reality. And there is a deep degree of diversity in styles and grapes and climate and aspect and soils within Napa. And most of the ones that are doing good work at still expensive but not outrageous prices, they're not getting the attention that the bigger names and the more expensive ones are. And they get lumped in together with the idea, the caricature of Napa. The reality is that there is more variation in temperature between Calistoga and Carneros, and there's more soil variation and elevation variation than there is in Burgundy within that same stretch. I do believe that there's things that we could reset.
Well, I wish the wineries would stop consolidating. I mean, the problem is, you know, have you guys ever seen the South Park episode where there's the like mom and pop shop and then they open up a Walmart next door and the whole town fights the Walmart to give this guy a chance to like have his store stay alive, and then it gets bigger and bigger and bigger and it becomes the new Walmart, and then they have to shut it down. And it's kind of like, you know, there's a reason like Steve Mathiasen is that winery's in every film I've done so far, is because they still take risks. You know, I mean, they're growing Italian varietals, they're doing things, they're making vermouth, they're really back to the kind of spirit of what Napa was. But a lot of the true great, you know, the Kathy Coruscants, all of the independent ones, they're getting fewer and fewer because they're getting bought up. You know, I mean, there's larger companies that buy everything. And so part of the, you know, you talk about the homogenous aspect of Napa, a lot of that's because they're all owned by like 4 or 5 companies now.
Jason, what hill are you dying on?
You really want me to go on my hill? I'll do it. This is going to
do it.
I don't know if this is going to piss anybody off or not, but my hill to die on is one simple one. Beaujolais Nouveau is terrible, and it is one of the most harmful things that exists to wine. I hate it. I want it to go away, and that's my hill to die on. I want Beaujolais Nouveau gone. I've often called Beaujolais Nouveau the McRib of wine. Comes around once a year. When it comes back, you've forgotten how terrible it was, and you're like, oh, the McRib's back at McDonald's. And so you get drunk, and you get a McRib, and you eat it, and you realize it's just like sponge folded into a rib shape. And I look at Beaujolais Nouveau the same way. It's like you take one of the great grapes of the world, Gamay, and you just wreck it based on something that they're not doing anymore. It'd be fun if they were still running carts to Paris, you know?
Yeah.
They're not. It's just a gigantic plonk factory that you can get at the grocery store. Nothing wrong with that wine, but it doesn't deserve the amount of effort that goes into it, and it does such a net negative to the region, and it ruins what I think is one of the great buys in wine. This is my hill to die on. This is not like a hot take I have, you know, because I read an article on 750 Daily. This is like a 15-year odyssey I've had with Gamay. I've probably been to Beaujolais, I don't know, upwards of 20 times. And my biggest problem with it is, first of all, I don't like the wine. It is like having a banana Laffy Taffy in most cases, if you're lucky. Most cases, it's just poorly made. It's rushed out in a way that's not cute. It's kind of just bad winemaking, in my opinion. It's what a lot of natural wines, natural wine gets knocked all the time because of some flaws. But like, truly, I think Beaujolais Nouveau across the board. And I know there's somebody out there that's like, but have you tried this one? And I'm like, yeah, but for that price, I can get 50 other great wines from 50 other regions that are better made, weren't intentionally rushed. And so Beaujolais itself, you know, with the Gamay grape, and there are a couple other grapes there, but with the Gamay grape, all of those little crus make incredibly distinct, different places that are, the prices on these wines are astounding. And it's a great place during a journey for wine for people to go. But when your first application of Gamay is Beaujolais Nouveau at a grocery store, the problem is you start to think that's what Gamay tastes like, that it's all like having a banana popsicle with bubble gum wrapped around it. And the problem with that is it takes away from so much tradition and work and incredible history that goes back 700-800 years in this region that's always been an underdog.
I think you're preaching to the choir among folks who are in the wine industry. Okay. But you know what? You know who I think is going to come in hot is Martin. I seem to remember that you have a hill you want to die on that I think I'm going to disagree with. I think I'm going to want to take a bulldozer to your hill.
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. This is what it's about after all. Yeah. Here's the hill. I believe that decarbonization, that our carbon footprint for a winery is as important, if not more important, for our long-term benefit than not using glyphosate. If you had to choose between the two things.
Glyphosate is Roundup.
Roundup, right. If you could only do one thing, I would say,
wow,
let's bring our carbon down.
Okay.
If you could choose between two things. I don't think they should, right? I don't think people should choose between either reducing their glyphosate use or becoming carbon neutral. But for our planet.
So you're in favor of immediate death, not long-term death, basically. Because
I'm in favor.
Like,
I'm not trying to choose.
If you're going to save you're going to save the climate, save the planet, and in doing so, use pesticides and herbicides, which we know like also kill animals and people and other things.
That's not. Okay. See, that's not what I'm saying. That's not what I'm saying.
I know.
I'm not saying you have to choose between the two. I'm saying is you have to look at everything together. And to make the point, I'm saying that I believe that one is more important than the other. I believe that the carbon impact of our planet is a bigger problem, because they're all problems, right? I don't want to put glyphosates in the cereal of my kids. I'm not saying that that's a good thing. I'm saying we need to get our carbon situation in order fast. That part is the biggest monster we have, Godzilla, right? Of our planet is carbon. The King Kong of our planet's problems is glyphosates. I think it's a smaller problem. But to only focus on one thing and call it the gold standard of sustainability because you're removing glyphosate and that's your only measure is short-sighted and as a misplaced obsession. The obsession should be everything.
Interesting. I've always found it to be kind of hand in hand. I mean, you know, the whole regenerative farming movement and stuff, which in a lot of cases can be as much of a buzzword as anything else. But the people who are doing it right, I think they're kind of adhering to both of those, aren't they, Martin, or no?
Yes, and I don't think that there should be a choice. We should look at everything. You're absolutely right, Jason. What I'm saying, though, is that the feedback the people are doing good work on all those areas get is you are greenwashing if you're not addressing everything And if you're saying that the entry point for you to come into an organization to then work to reduce your synthetic pesticides, that means that you're bad. But it's like the Beaujolais Nouveau of the sustainability topic. You focus on one thing, and it ends up being this like, no, there's so much more there that you can get into, that you can, in this case for drinking wine, to enjoy.
On that note, I think it's time for our dessert course. And I thought I would die on a possibly unpopular hill for my dessert course. With the holidays coming up, I have to admit that I am allergic to Christmas music and really don't like it at all. I'm sorry if that makes me a Grinch.
Wow.
But
Damn.
I do like to listen to, some nice ballads, some old kind of classics this time of year. And so this is a little embarrassing maybe, but I actually love the music of supermodel and actress Carla Bruni. She has this fantastic smoky voice, and she sings these classic standards in her like Italian French accent, and they're awesome. And it's so good to cook to. It's so good to entertain. Just, play this music in the background. Everyone feels relaxed, and it's like, oh, these wonderful old familiar songs. Her take on "You Belong to Me" is like the best one I've ever heard. And maybe her husband Nicolas Sarkozy is under house arrest for corruption, but we can't all be perfect. I don't know. She's probably very controversial for many reasons, but I do like the music.
That's great.
And now you can rip me apart for not liking Christmas music.
Yeah, well, there's only 50 good Christmas songs. And with 4 kids, I've listened to all 50 1,000 times already.
There you go.
Same for me.
It can be a bit much.
2 kids.
Oh boy.
When I hear the name Carla Bruni, you know what comes to mind? I think I heard an interview once. She's half French and half Italian, right? And she this is her saying this, not me. You understand French people and you understand Italians, but don't you understand that French people are just Italians in a bad mood?
I've read that. She's funny too, right?
Which I found that really amusing.
That is hilarious. I've been on a crazy Riesling kick lately, which is fun. Riesling and champagne. And so not very Christmassy, but I've been telling, my buddies and friends, and if they're ordering sushi, like try sushi with champagne. And I know that may seem like, not weird to you guys, but that is what the newest thing in our house is champagne with sushi, and then just finish it off with some Riesling. Another thing is like grilling, even though it's rainy in Portland, finding a way to put some burn marks on that meat, and then getting like a Northern Rhone. Just like a good Syrah. I always say Northern Rhone, but just getting a good Syrah with like some barbecued meat is kind of where my jam has been lately. I don't know. It's gotten weird.
You're making me hungry.
Yeah.
Oh, nothing weird about champagne and Riesling and sushi. That's I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. Yum.
You're such wine and food snobs.
That's so funny.
All right. Who else has a dessert course for us?
Man, dessert course. You're talking to somebody who's now, I'm in post-production on 2 really big feature films that have been a real tough process to make. So I'm like working around the clock, and the most important stuff in the holidays is to be able to find a way to turn my brain off. And you'd think movies and music would not be that way because I'm working with those nonstop, but look, here's an alternative to your Christmas music pain. No matter what, I will never get tired of Vince Guaraldi, who did the music for the Charlie Brown Christmas, but also all of his other music is incredible. Died way too young. And there's another musician named Clifford Brown. He's a jazz musician who's my favorite in the world.
Love Clifford Brown. Yes.
Yeah. So those are my 2. Put those on, and they still have the kind of like, uplifting, fast movement type of a thing that I think works for the mood, but it's not Mariah Carey or
Wham.
Yeah, Wham. I can't with that. I'm with you on some Christmas songs, but the mood's important,
Christmas jazz is better than Christmas songs.
Yes, Christmas jazz. Yeah. That's where I'm at.
Oh yeah.
You can't mess up Christmas jazz.
So I also have this really weird thing I do during December, especially considering I'm working so hard, and it drives my wife crazy, but I try to watch every major Nicolas Cage movie during the month of December every year.
Oh, man.
You know, what you need to do is you need to bring a computer into the kitchen. You need to make something that takes a long time. And one of my favorite things to make during the holidays is beef bourguignon, like real beef bourguignon, not like the like stew stuff that you can find. I'm talking like the stuff that takes many hours and there's a lot of layers to it and it's very hard. And you watch Face Off and then you watch The Rock and you just sit in the kitchen and you make beef bourguignon and you watch those films. That's my
Ghost
like
Rider.
Zen.
Pig.
Ghost Rider. Yeah. Ghost Rider. Yes. I'm in. That's definitely on the rotation for sure. Pour yourself a cocktail, watch some Nick Cage.
Gin martinis are kind of my thing. Dude, I don't know.
Yeah.
Man, I'm new to the martini game. Where have I been? But those things are delicious.
Yeah, everybody talks about dry January, and I think it's like, yeah, dry, just cut out wine.
Yeah.
You know, for a month. And then have tons of wine the other 11 months. So
Ooh, that's going to be tough.
Martin, do you have a dessert course for us?
Channing, you bring up something that comes right back to my childhood memories of listening to Christmas jazz, laying on the shag rug, probably polyester laden with chemicals in the early 80s in San Diego, just enjoying the 98.1 KIFM jazz radio Christmas stuff with my dad. The Mannheim Steamroller Stille Nacht. It's Silent Night. Of course, the Silent Night is a pretty song no matter what. But when you throw in these layers of a humming chorus, then with this like electric violin, and then like this whole arching, melodic, unique, sort of jazzy kind of vibe to it.
All right, I'm queuing it up right now.
So you're just sitting on your rug listening to the music. What you got to drink? What's in your glass?
Probably some champagne, just like you suggested, or maybe some port.
Ooh, anything but a hot Malbec. I'm good.
a mulled Malbec.
Well, sadly, we need to wrap up, and I just want to thank our amazing guests for joining us for this unscoped journey. We didn't have a real plan, and it turned out to be such a fun conversation, and I really appreciate both of your time. Listeners, you can find out more about Channing Frye's delicious wines at chosenfamilywines.com.
Yes, you can.
And you can see Jason Wise's work at www.somtv.com. That is SOMM. There's two M's there. TV.com. Also, check out the new website for my Climate Action Symposium for Napa Rise. risegreen.org. That's where you can find me. And I'm also at reiswinegroup.com and winewise.biz.
And you can find me, Catherine Cole, at catherinecole.com. But don't go there. Go to thefourtop.org where you can find our social media handles and let us know what you thought of the episode. We want to hear from you about what you want to kvetch about, the wine hill you want to die on, and what you thought about our crazy opinions.
Signing out from the attention-grabbing region in the world of Napa Valley. Thanks so much for listening, everyone.
And signing out from the high-fiber, protein-packed city of Portland, Oregon, in the Willamette Valley. Thanks for listening, everyone. Bye-bye.
This has been the Four Top Podcast. Catherine Cole is our executive producer. Izzy Kramer is our senior producer. And I'm Keelan King, sound supervisor. We are also assisted by audio editor Michelle Richards, editorial assistant Nick Toole, and media assistant Ruby Welkovich. Please visit our website, thefourtop.org, to learn more about us, listen to back episodes, reach out to us on social media, and purchase books written by our amazing panelists. And if you have not already subscribed to The Four Top on iTunes or Spotify, please do so and leave us a rating. Stay safe out there, and thanks for listening.
Hey everyone, before we go, a very happy new year to you. And if you are looking for the most refreshing sparkling wine to celebrate the new year with, may we recommend some beautiful bubbly from a beautiful part of the world. Conegliano Valdobbiadene Prosecco Superiore DOCG. This is a UNESCO World Heritage designated region in the steep and scenic foothills of the Italian Alps. Conegliano Valdobbiadene is home to Europe's first wine road and Italy's first winemaking school. And its wines are guaranteed to be superiore, with each label printed with a unique bottle number as well as the vintage year. And there are top growing zone designations as well. Just look for the terms Rive or Cartizze on the label to explore those. You can go to the website at prosecco.it, that's IT for Italy, to learn more about this fascinating region. If you love fine wine, and if you just listen to this podcast, I know you do, then Conegliano, Valdobbiadene, Prosecco Superiore, DOCG, these are the wines for you. I'm just going to spell it, just so you are absolutely clear on that name. Conegliano is Conegliano, and Valdobbiadene is VALDOBBIADENE. Whew. Thank you to Conegliano, Valdobbiadene, Prosecco Superiore, DOCG. This campaign was financed according to EU regulation number 1308-2013. Thanks, guys.